Thank you. Well, I think we're ready to begin. Welcome everyone to our January 22nd meeting of the Sun Valley Nominations and Elections Committee's meeting. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Our first item, it would be to adopt our agenda.
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Okay.
I'll second
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nope.
Heard lots of ayes. Okay. Are there any announcements?
Can you guys hear me?
We
Yeah.
can, yes.
Okay, let me see something. I might need to. Okay, good. I'm sorry. I'm gonna.
It's all right.
I might have to redo something.
Are we recording? Or we?
That's what I'm gonna change. I'm going to
It did come on and say you were recording.
It did come on, but I just want to make sure that it's going to the right place.
Okay.
And I may have to go out and come back in.
All of us?
I'm not sure. Hold on.
Well, while we're all sitting here, last year we all kind of agreed that we didn't have to, as such a small group, do the voting ayes and 100% and all that, since Robert Rules of Order really don't apply in the
Small group.
smallest group that we are.
Yeah. Yeah, technically they apply, but being a small committee, we don't have to set, you're right, we don't have to vote on things like adopting the agenda and whatnot. So Morgan, we can just kind of hang for a second. I think
I think I see that it's recording.
Okay.
And I think we're okay.
We're okay?
Yes. Right. I'm gonna check one thing, but keep going.
Okay.
So I have a question about the Roberts Rules thing. So I know kind of like the businessy administrative stuff, we don't have to as much, but like for a normal motion, which we don't always have a ton of business, but do we need that seconded in the whole thing, or is it more consensus, or I'm not sure.
Well, my recall is that we are actually still subject to Robert's Rules, but there's a section of Robert's Rules called small meetings or small committees.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of it is relaxed. For instance, normally a chair doesn't get to vote unless there's a tie. In a small group, of which the board is actually considered still a small group, the chair can vote.
Okay.
I think maybe seconds are not needed for motions, but there should be motions and there should be a record of how the voting went, you know? So it's not that it doesn't apply at all, but it's made more workable for such a small group.
I think the word relaxed was a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
If we're gonna move toward doing something very specific, like going to the board with something, we should make a motion, and this is what the motion would say, so that that person that's going to, like Rob being the chair, would know exactly the verbiage that we agreed on. But as for voting, like adopting the agendas, or if anybody has something they want to say about it, they can, but if there's no changes or anything, it's just automatically adopted.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like
it's a little more relaxed.
Yeah, it's the consent agenda piece, and I can reach out.
I don't like that, but yeah.
Yeah.
I know,
you have history.
They'll have rope marks from the consent agenda.
Well, I mean, I think there's probably some definitions around what a consent agenda actually includes and what it doesn't. But I have one other thing, and that is, I think I emailed you or maybe all of you earlier. I couldn't find the agenda on the website. I did find it, but like you have to click on the N&E landing page itself. Like if you just are looking in that list of committees.
meeting minutes.
Yeah, the 2024 isn't showing up for that one, or I think the finance committee. So you have to actually click on the landing page. So I just wanted to say that publicly in case anybody's out there like the agenda wasn't posted. It is. I did find it. But for some reason the link to like 2024 agendas and minutes isn't on that main committee's page. You have to go to the individual committee landing page to find it. So
it's a long process.
Well, thank you for that, and that's good for if anybody's listening in or listens in the future about that information. So we see where we're at on the agenda. We have adopted the agenda. The approving the minutes. I think we're at that point. So I think everybody got the December 4th minutes from 2023. Is there any changes that we need to add to them?
Didn't have any.
Hearing none, they are approved.
Ray, did I email you the copy of the minutes?
Ray, I think that was a question to you.
Yeah, I did get a copy of it.
Okay, then I do have your email address.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. I want to make sure he's in that communication. Are there any announcements? The only announcement I have is that the applications for the open board seat closed at close of business today. We received 6 applications. We'll get into more detail. I think we'll get into more of that detail when we get to item 6, but that we did receive 6 of them.
That's great.
Yeah, that is really
It's
good.
good to see the community interested in participating.
Yes.
I think,
Yes. Do we have any property owners online with us, Morgan?
I do not see any.
Okay, we will go ahead and move into item 5 then, which is review of the UniLect 2024 contract. I thought Joanne might be joining us. I don't see her here, but maybe she will jump on. I had invited her. Kind of set the table for you guys on this part. As you recall, in our December meeting, we decided that we should go to the board and ask that they move forward with getting a contract in place with UniLect with opening the elections, having other election vendors bid for the 2025 so that we ensure that we are spending the association's money well. Part of what we were driving earlier was an earlier contact with UniLect is that they had communicated to us a bit of a concern that their November calendar was beginning to fill up. And just to continue to brief you guys, I reached out to our board president requesting that we have an item added to the agenda to start this process in place. He, in communicating with me, said, "Hey, I think it's a little early. Why don't you sit down with Joanne and work with the N&E committee to get a contract in place? Any of the language that you guys might be concerned with, go ahead and start to work that out. If you need help, let us know. Once a contract is been sent over to Sudden Valley, at that point, then it becomes board business and they can review it approve or add any language that they would like. So I followed with that idea. I was happy to, and Joanne and I sat down, had a great meeting, I thought. And in it, we talked about how things went in the election last year, some concerns and opportunities for improvement. What I told her was I didn't want to really get into somebody didn't do this or UniLect didn't do that. I wanted to look more at the process and see what we could do to ensure it's robust and improved. So a couple of our takeaways were, one, the printed materials was poor, and we wanted some improvement with that. I questioned her about the change in the contract from last year and then years past on why the board was included in section 2 with the GM being their representative. And she shared with me again the attorney's opinion that the board is responsible for all activity within the Sudden Valley. And so there was that. I've got some things to share with you on each of these points as we go forward. We talked about the fact that a number of our residents, homeowners, property owners didn't get their ballot materials in a timely manner, especially the Canadians. I didn't realize we have actually somebody who lives in Japan. That's a resident, for example. So we talked about that. We both agreed on the urgency of trying to get UniLect on board for 2024. The fact that there aren't a lot of these type of companies that provide a service like UniLect does. So we talked about that. Try to just debrief with you guys about things. So getting to the first one, the printed materials. Joanne feels strongly that there should be perhaps a printer here locally so that when the materials are printed, they could be proofread here. And when we brought that up with UniLect, they pointed out that, well, there is a printing process that a lot of printers have moved to, which is more of an inkjet printing rather than they use the term, I'm sorry, they live in this world, but it's, say, like laser printing, for example. And a lot of the printers have gone to that because it's cheaper for them to do. But they said they would be willing to require that the printed materials be done in a manner where it doesn't smear like this other type of printing. We brought up that that our files that we send down to them are set in an 8.5 by 11 format, and then as a PDF, it gets manipulated to fit on the small ballot material, the information booklet. And that is problematic because like you guys, like when you take a picture and you start to pull it out and it gets pixelated or push it in too far, there's problems like that. UniLect shared with us that because of the compressed time frame that they were under last year, they were given pieces of the data that needed to get into the booklet. And for Joanne, things were changing quickly and at near the last minute where she had to quickly get this material to them. And so rather than all the data coming in one file at once. It was coming in pieces. So kind of like page 2 came before page 4, etc. And hopefully I'm getting this right. So there was that. In terms of having a printer up here in Bellingham, UniLect had some concern because there are certain requirements that they need, as a company that they can provide to other companies, but they got to work with them closely to ensure that those requirements are met or that they understand them. So there was that piece. The piece with the adding the board and the general manager to section 2.
Well, hey, Rob, can we stop and discuss this
Oh,
a little bit
absolutely.
before we move on? So,
I just like to
yeah.
Please, thank you.
Just want to, well, my question is just after the discussions with UniLect about the printing, because I know some of it was smaller, and I could also see why there would be concerns to them for moving here. I mean, basically that puts all of it on us to make sure that it is appropriate, because they wouldn't have the relationship probably with the local printer. But also, I mean, we've used UniLect since I think 2020, and this was the first time I recall having that kind of issue. So I guess my question is just, after having the conversation, did they feel confident that they had processes in place? Also, I understand this requires us to have our processes in place, but that it wouldn't happen again. Meaning,
yeah, my sense after talking to them, Karen, is, well, after we talked to them, was that they want to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
mm-hmm.
That they would like to work with their printer in California to ensure that that the printing techniques that they use are of the highest quality.
Mm-hmm.
But it would also require us to try to do.
Yes. You're making a ton of racket doing whatever you're doing and drowning everybody out.
Sorry. I wanted to raise my hand because I wanted to speak to this, and I thought maybe I had to have the camera back on.
You can do it below. There's a little raise hand. If you go to the very bottom, move your cursor, you'll see a little raise hand.
And team, I apologize. I know I get a little long-winded in answering the question. So
oh yeah, it's okay, I guess.
So I think long story short, I think they feel like they can ensure, and they didn't like the outcome either, but I think they feel like they could work with their printer and mainly make sure that they're using a printing technique that's not going to smear. And in terms of the small font or the small writing, some of that I think is just in some of it I think is us sending pieces of the data down. Go ahead, Gail.
What I wanted to say is that it seems to me that the conversation with UniLect kind of went a little bit off track in this sense. The problems that we had would have been resolved if we had had the physical hard copy of the election booklet, not only an electronic copy. If we'd had in other words, if UniLect could have FedExed us or however, the physical booklet, we would have seen the small font. We would have seen the fact that the back of the ballot apparently had instructions that didn't relate to anything on the ballot. Those were the two problems that we had with the printing. So it's not an issue of the quality, laser versus inkjet, or anything like that. As I remember, the central thing was that I don't think that Joanne got hard copy. I'm fairly sure that she didn't. And by the time NNE and I as chair got the electronic copy, because I went back and looked, there was nothing on the back of the ballot. And of course, from the problem we had that Megan Thagason brought to our attention. And of course, electronically, I couldn't detect that the font was like 6 point, as opposed to like normally it's 12 or 10. So just wanted to share that. That I would think whatever happens, that NNE and the GM should have a chance to look at the physical booklet. And that might mean an overnight express of the hard copy, but that's $12, $15 to do that. It's not a big
and we're still in the early discussion with them. So that's a good process improvement as well.
Well, and may I have one more thing with my little hand icon? See, Michael, just really quickly, my thought would be, like probably is reluctant to give up the printing because they might have to change the price, right? I mean, all of this is part of their service, and if they reduce what they're offering, then obviously they want to probably do it for the price, at least the price they've been doing it in the past.
We'll get to that because there's some pricing. We'll talk about that.
So I see the Michael hand is up.
It is. Michael.
Since I've been involved in this from the beginning of UniLect's handling the elections, I remember that UniLect in order for them to certify and stand behind what their job is in this, they have to be in control of the whole process. That's why they want to use their own printer. They can oversee it and certify it and see it and all that. The question I have was, and I never got a direct answer last year. I'm not gonna. Okay. In 2021, we didn't have hardly any problems other than the situation with allowing UniLect to come up on Thursday instead of Friday. So we lost 117 votes that way. But that was the chair's doing. NNE's chair did that and agreed to let them come up on Thursday rather than staying till Friday at noon when their mail came in. And we solved that problem this year. The other thing that changed was inserting the general manager into controlling all the handling and discussions with UniLect. And in the past, that had never happened. And I want to know, did UniLect, I never got the direct answer as to whether UniLect had a hand or a say in approving the final draft of what was going to print. I know we sent them information, but Gail, did you get a look at anything from the end to say, yes, that's good, let's print it, or was all that done by the GM or staff?
I did see it, Michael, but it was electronic. It was just attachment to an email. Okay. That's why I'm thinking, had it been hard copy, we would have noticed that tiny font. We would have noticed something on the back of the ballot that shouldn't have been.
And I don't know in the past, because Linda was in charge the first year that we did it, and then Nancy was in charge, and I saw nothing that year. And so I wasn't sure how it came in the past. That's what I'm trying to find out. So if what we've done through here is fix some processes, I think that there is always adding something adds an expense to everything. So, but if there is time and funds to get just a hard copy, bam, this is what it's going to look like, I think that'd be a good idea. And it could be asked, it's a simple question.
So Michael, I know you're going to capture that item in the minutes, that hard copy. So there's more to the conversation and where we're at with the contract I want to share with you. Feel free to stop me as we go along. So when we got to, somebody's doing a bit of there's some clapping or something I'm hearing. We could,
you know, we might want to just mute ourselves while one person's talking. And then put your hand up if you want to talk, and then you can be called on and unmute.
and I can see everybody's window. So in regard to, and Michael, you kind of alluded to this, the insertion of the board and the GM as the representative in section 2 of the contract. That was shared with me that that came as a request from the executive committee last year as a result of the attorney's opinion. And so I wanted to better understand that. So what I asked Keith McLean to share with us all of the all of our attorney's opinions in regard to the N&E committee since 2020, and all of the communication that drove the request for those opinions, so we can understand the rationale of why they needed an opinion, and the specific question asked to the attorney. I asked this because mainly I just want our committee to be on the same page as to what the concern is, so that we are understanding. Go ahead, Karen. I see your hands up. You're muted, Karen.
Okay, sorry, the host had me muted. Okay, so couple of things I would say about that. If the executive committee last year voted to have this done, certainly you would think, and I wouldn't say the executive committee, I would say the entire board could elect to have this undone. I'm glad that you went ahead and asked for the attorney's opinion, how the question was worded, and if it was specific to this, I would be particularly curious about, and wanting to follow the rules and follow attorney's guidance. I would want to honor that, but the question I would ask almost is, does the board need to be involved in this? Or, I mean, because I went back and I read the bylaws again, and I understand that the board has the authority and really the responsibility for everything here. They have the ultimate responsibility. But in my opinion, the bylaws have delegated this portion of the responsibility to N&E, just like certain portions of the board's responsibility are delegated to finance to then report up to the board. And so I'm just going to read these so it's on the record. But the committee shall supervise the balloting during elections as set forth in Article 3, Section 3 of these bylaws. The committee shall supervise elections conducted by any annual or special general meeting. And then it goes on to talk about how you can't be on the board and N&E at the same time, except for the chair who's, so to me, there is, this is a board responsibility, and certain parts of it are delegated to N&E. And then there's a separation created to keep the board from being overly involved in this. And that's why N&E is also elected, and various things. What's not in there anywhere is that the board delegates this responsibility to the GM. So to me, it's either the board does it, although the bylaws seem to kind of contradict that and say, actually, this is a responsibility of N&E, and we've created some separation, which is different than like a finance committee. It doesn't delegate that responsibility to the GM. So if it's going to be delegated, to me, it should be delegated per the bylaws, which is N&E. Now, of course, if N&E goes rogue and does crazy things, or we're just not doing it at all, of course, then the board steps in. But again, I would really like to understand where the attorney was coming from with that. Was it specific to N&E and elections? And does it need do they need to? Does the GM need to be inserted into this? And it's not that I think any GM is not capable of it, but they've got a lot of other things going on. So let's let the GM focus on those things and let the NNE committee focus on the things that the bylaws have already delegated to NNE to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm with you. And Joanne shared with me at our meeting that there were, I mean, this was kind of weird. Like there were members who came in, they would have maybe multiple properties, and the the envelope that they had looked different for each of the different properties. So they were concerned, were they being tracked or something? I mean, just stuff like that, that the NNE chair could have, sorry, Gail and Michael at the time, but things that maybe they could have got involved in or contacted UniLect and said, why does does this look different? I have a feeling that last year there was a lot of work that went in. Well, I know a lot of work went in on the NE part, but for her part, that frankly, under the bylaws, our committee could have addressed, and she could have been gave her more time to manage the organization. I'll just say that I think that last year, and this is all I'm going to say, is there was some concern that perhaps the committee might be behaving in a way that might have been biased. And I don't know what we did that might make someone feel that way, but there was a concern about some bias. And for me, I'm looking forward to this year. I believe that we have responsibilities that have been given to us under the bylaws. We work in conjunction with the board, but the election itself has been given to us. So how I would like to see our committee communicate with the board, and I'll be there at every board meeting, but as we go down the timeline to the election, what I'd like to do is put key milestones that are occurring so we can go to the board meeting and say, here's where we're hitting these milestones, and we're keeping you appraised how things are going. And I think that allows us to act in a professional manner. One of the things that Joanne and I talked about was, in the past we've asked a communications committee to conduct the candidate forums. We've done it the last year. We did last year. Perhaps we ought to formulate some questions, but find maybe there's a community member that really has gifts of moderating things, that maybe a community member could do that. So it's not the NNE committee, it's not the general manager, it's the community is conducting a candidate forum with a moderator. I thought that was her idea, and I thought that was a good idea, So, Karen, you still got your hand up. You want to weigh in? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. The host, it keeps giving me an error that says the host won't allow me to unmute. So, what I want to say early on is where you said the board had some feelings about how NNE was operating. And I think that's why the language is in the bylaws that says the board can't sit on NNE. I think that's specifically for that reason. The NNE has to absolutely operate within bylaws and governing documents and state law and all of that. But within that, if we're operating within that realm, again, I think the bylaws address this, that there's not undue influence from the board because of perceived bias. That's why NNE is elected. That's why there's a separation. The other thing I was going to say, hold on, I forgot. Oh, and in going with that, putting the GM in the middle of some of these things, like a lot of what has been discussed is maybe timeline issues and whatnot. Rob, you could remember when Linda was the chair and we weren't on task, like we weren't following the timeline that we as a board approved, she would let us hear about it, right? And that puts a GM in a really tough position. Those are her bosses. Or any GM. That's who signs their contract. And if you're going to kind of publicly say, hey, you guys are not doing your job, that puts that person in a really tough position. So I don't think it should be them. I think it should be N&E, because we're protected from that. We're not going to lose our jobs and our livelihood because we called out the board as a whole for not following their timeline or not getting things done, or, whatever, which Linda did. She was not shy about it, and we got ourselves back on track.
That's very true. Gail, get your hand up. You got the floor. Gail, maybe she's having trouble unmuting too. Morgan, if you're there, would you unmute Gail?
I'm not, yeah,
I'm unmuted.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, well, I just basically, Karen, I really appreciate the way you put it, and I think it's excellent, and I think that was a central problem. Number one, lack of clarity, but probably underlying the lack of clarity was lack of trust, basically. For whatever reason, I don't think it was fair or accurate, but I think that the executive committee of last year's board viewed us as rebels or renegades or people had keep a close eye on us. But I want to speak quickly to the notion of letting the forums be run by the community.
Sure.
It's a fair amount of organization that goes on with all of this. None of it just happens because you have a brilliant idea and like, whoopee, it's done. There are many steps that are put in place. And I've always felt that because it's an election, because it's candidates, that the N&E was actually a very appropriate entity to run the forums. And I'd like to add on a personal note, when I look back on 2023, what was the night in my life when I had the most fun? Is when I moderated that first forum. I'll tell you, it was really fun, and many people seem to like it. So just FYI, maybe it's a statement about how impoverished the rest of my life is. That was a highlight, but it really was. So at any rate, just two comments.
Sure.
And also, well, Rob, have you gotten all those legal opinions and communications? Or are you still waiting on them?
I have not received them yet. I wanted to let I want to give a little bit of time, and we had snow. I'm going to be requesting an ECD, an estimated completion date. So, yeah.
Okay.
Michael, I saw both you and Ray have your hands up, but I don't know we're up first. So, Ray, go ahead, Ray.
I know he's muted.
Oh, sorry about that. They had a hard time unmuting. That's weird. Anyway, Karen, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Ray. And I agree with what Karen's saying, that the GM really doesn't need to be involved in what we're doing on this committee. That's why we are on this committee. And I'm new at this game, but definitely there's a distinction difference between what we do and then having the board involved, unless they do oversee everything. But we're kind of like designated to do our job, and the GM doesn't really need to be involved unless there's some major issue. It should go back to the board. That's
Right.
my read on it.
Thank you, Ray. Michael, did you have your hand up?
I did. Real quickly, I'd like to say that I agree with Gail. I do not think, I think the entity should handle the forums. and we shouldn't have to go through a sensory type process. The bylaws state what they state about Ini's role. The board was very clear and correct. One, they didn't want a communication committee for whatever reason that they had, but they did feel that Ini should handle the forums, and I think they were done well, and everybody enjoyed them. And I would really push for that this year, is let Ini just handle the process. Period. That's what the bylaws state. Let's stick with it.
Yeah, that's good. Guys, just to share. Oh, go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And we've kind of beat this horse half to death. We should, unless there's something really big that we haven't covered, it'd be nice to move forward into the next thing, because we could talk for 2 hours on this one product.
Yeah, I think we could. I just wanted to share with you guys. The idea wasn't so much to hand the forum, the candidate forum, over the entire forum over to the community. It would be the role of the moderator, the person that would come and ask the questions. Might be somebody from the community, but more later, you guys. This is early on. The other thing I just want to tell you and leave, and then we'll move to the next item. So where we're at with UniLect is UniLect has penciled us into the first Saturday in November for our AGM. So they're holding that date until we get the contract signed. We committed to them to use them as our vendor this year, but we wanted to work out the details of the contract, so that's why they're holding that date. We didn't want them to feel like, hey, hold this date for us, and gee, we might be out talking to other vendors. We asked them to send us a contract with modules. One module might be, well, if you were going to have your own printer up in Bellingham, then the cost might change. So or you could check that box. This is what it might be. They have a postal courier that's willing to take the Canadian ballots up into Canada and mail them in Canada itself. And there's some other discussion we had around the Canadian stuff around. I had some questions about that. So we should see, I don't know, I don't want to say next week, but we should see a draft contract that we will look at first and review and put our comments, our concerns that we could take to the board, and I would share that with the board, and I'm sure the board will have their concerns, and we'll discuss that as well at the board meeting. So mainly I just wanted you guys to know what we talked about. We have the date for this year, and more will be revealed in regard to the contract. Gail, your hand's up.
Okay, I guess you can hear me?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I only wanted to say about the Canadian thing. Yes, mailed within Canada, but also that the ballots are returned within the Canadian system. Otherwise, we run into this delay. Joanne, I think, was present and heard herself that the system with Canada Post in the US is that the mail goes all the way to Buffalo, New York, or a Canada Post in Ontario, crosses Buffalo, and then comes back. So invariably, it's going to take a week at least, assuming all those things go smoothly. So at any rate, yes, mail within Canada and mail back to Canada.
Yep.
Yeah. So if that was covered, that's fine. That
was all covered. Yep.
Okay, take my hand down, however I do.
All right. Anything more about the contract?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So our next item is the new business, the open board seat applications. Ray, we appreciate you being with us tonight, but I think at this point, maybe you might want to wait a minute,
Jump
Michael,
off.
got your hand up.
Uh before Ray leaves, if we're going to have a process here of a discussion on, I know Gail's email said that she wanted to kind of discuss the process, like when the like before you reveal any names and we talk about anything, when the AGM comes, all the stuff is kept in a central pile. We don't know as in any what's in those applications for a person running for the board for the AGM. We have no idea what's in them. They're sealed envelopes, and we open them under a camera. It's all recorded, and they're opened under, being recorded, and everything is out in the open. And I was secretary last year. No, I think Gail was secretary. No, I was then again secretary by that time. And so I recorded everything and was able to put it out in the secretary's report also. So there was a visual broadcast, recorded broadcast of that, and meeting minutes for that opening and stuff. For the life of me, well, actually, I've never been involved in the process of what we're going to do for an appointee. Like if somebody steps down and then we get these packets. I think Gail alluded to the fact that this should all be done the same way, if I'm understanding her email correctly. And so I think Ray should stay, and we could be in a short conversation about, figuring out, we don't have to solve it tonight, but figuring out how do we handle this going forward and for entity committees ahead of us. That's part of our job, is to, as we see things, we want to be able to put it in the entity manual for the future people, to be able to handle these things. And right. So, if you're not going to go into the naming of names and all that yet, I think Ray could stay and we can get his opinion.
Well, sure. And I guess at this point, the names are out there. This Sudden Valley, it's on the Sudden Valley website with which is really does follow what we've done in the past. I know that Karen and I have been on the receiving end of being interviewed, and so have you, Michael. I asked Karen. I see your hand. I asked Linda Bradley for some feedback on what the process was in the past on the committee and the chair's end, which I've tried pretty close to follow. Go ahead, Karen. You got your hand up.
Well, sorry, you could finish. I just had a thought, so I decided to raise my hand. I can't find anywhere. So I agree with doing it the same. I think consistency is good and predictability. I can't find anywhere that actually, other than maybe it's in the entity manual, that says that nobody could know the identities of those people that have applied, like for the AGM. And just in discussing it last year, and I don't think you go and share it out, but it kind of would be nice for the chair only to know who those people are and be able to possibly communicate with them, like, hey, just so you know, this is going to be due at this time and whatnot. So I know there's benefits to both sides of it. But it is kind of interesting that, like, there is all that talk about it, it has to be secret and we don't even open them until this time. And I know that's tradition, but I can't find anywhere other than the entity manual that it states that. Yeah. But then for, a vacancy, we really don't have any of that. And so I would like what is the best process, because, you know, if you had some of that information earlier, like for the AGM, I could imagine, and I would think this would be done for vacancies too, like, hey, you're missing this piece. Can you fill that in or whatever, you know?
Well, in this case where we have people who are applying for an open seat, the activity is really condensed because today was at close of business was the last day. I have only a few days to coordinate with the applicants for their interviewing, which is going to occur on Thursday. There's at least one case where somebody is going to need to be interviewed via Zoom because of an important prior commitment. So there's all of this stuff going on that I need to, that kind of falls in the air, that I was kind of working behind the scenes a little bit, you know, where if
But
I didn't know
we have that for the AGM too, where they have 2, 4, 5 days before the final version has to be submitted for print in the ballot book, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm talking about coordination to make sure that people are available to come and interview. There's that.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
the same with getting their information, you know, making sure they have their bios and their whatever submitted for the, it's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about that last year, like trying to get that information beforehand. And kind of the thought was then like, oh no, we can't, you know, NNE can't have that information before we do the official unveiling.
Well,
but it creates some challenges.
yeah, Gail, I do see your hand. Just want to finish this thought. If I guess we could have waited until 4:30 today and opened them all at the same time, vetted them all at the same time, and then I could I or the committee or somebody could quickly start working the coordination for the interviews and what people need to know. Anyway, go ahead, Gail. What was your thought?
Well, even though I did say I thought the process should be the same for both, I also would probably, I feel that there is some value actually in not maintaining that secrecy for both. And the reason is, you know, when you're trying to decide whether or not to run for almost anything, you sort of want to know, well, who else is running? And like, is that person a strong candidate? Are they going to get a lot of votes? Or is it someone who no one's ever heard of who may get a trickle of votes? And that can influence your decision to throw your hat in the ring. I mean, it's information. Now, I was thinking of public elections. I think with public elections, there's a filing deadline. You do have to file by that deadline. I don't know that the bureau or organization that runs that, probably the county elections department or whatever, is publishing when the applications come in. Usually it's the candidates who go ahead because they want to get a head start. You know, they'll say, hey, I'm running, I've made my decision, today's my kickoff, today I've done this, today I've done that. But it's not that I think that we should be necessarily secret, nor do I think that we maybe have to come to a decision tonight. But it seems to me there could be value in letting folks know, because basically, you know, to have a strong community, we want to have people who want to be involved, and people will make that decision whether or not they want to be involved. To some extent, I think they know it's going to cost them time and money, partly to be a candidate, but certainly, it will use their time for sure, and maybe some money if they actually succeed. So I'm just being a voice, not a devil's advocate, really, because I've been thinking about it, thinking, would it be stronger for the Valley if this information was as applications come in, it's made public, or should we rely on the candidate themselves to do that?
Yeah, obviously there must have been some reason why we put the practice in place to be secret and then open them all at the same time. Maybe something happened in the past that drove that. Karen, you got your hand up. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Yeah, sorry, I keep thinking of things. The other thing I was thinking of, I hadn't ever participated in the great unveiling of the envelopes, even when I was a candidate, which I guess is embarrassing, but I think I was on vacation. I think it would be really awkward if sometimes things happen, you know, and someone is behind in a payment or they have a fine that maybe they don't like. To me, that would be so awkward. And like, it's live, it's streaming it. We publish it. People in the past were invited to come, and I don't know. Again, I think I would consider public, like Gail is talking about, just letting people know as that they come in, but even just the chair and a member of staff to just vet them and follow up and make sure they have all their information. For the years I've lived here, oftentimes there is a situation with someone not having all of their information in, and maybe they're out of pocket for the 2 days in between. But I would sure hate for someone's, at the AGM at least, for their envelope to be opened and for it to be said out loud to the whole community, they're not in good standing. To me, that would be super embarrassing. And if nothing else, I think we should have a process in place to deal with that before that happens sometime, because that would, I don't think that should happen. I think that if someone's willing to put their name out there, we should at least privately check whether they're in good standing or not. And then it can be said, you know, validate that they are, but we shouldn't be looking for the first time. Then I would sure hate for that to be the way somebody found out that, you know, they were behind a couple bucks or they missed a this or that or whatever.
Yeah. Go ahead, Michael. I see you got your hand up. You got the floor.
I know it's not this isn't in our agenda of what we're going to do this year, but I know we never got the N&E manual approved last year with all the work that we put into it. And I'm sure that in February, we can put in the agenda to discuss the update and approval of the N&E manual. Maybe we should add this process of candidates. How do we handle this? Why was it done the way it was? And should it and could it be changed?
That's a good idea. And I could invite Linda Bradley to join our meeting because, you know, as you guys know, she's got a lot of past experience on serving on this committee, and maybe she knows, you know. So, any other thoughts, Ray? You got anything you'd like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Everybody doesn't know I did put in to be a candidate to get interviewed for that 1-year board position. Just opportunity came around and opportunity to vote and get some more input. It interests me, so I went for it. It's kind of interesting how you're talking about opening everybody's the certain time and then keeping disclosure, or kind of like it was mentioned, hey, if somebody's behind dues, that'd be embarrassing. I agree with that. I had a small situation like that, and Rob handled it very good and called me directly. He says, hey, the office says you're behind. And, you know, it was an error on that accounting and ended up, you know, Sudden Valley owed me 2 months. I overpaid him. So anyway, I mean, I just rolled off, but it would be embarrassing if it was a real thing, but I knew it wasn't. But yeah, so kind of keep that stuff under the taps and within the committee, get it taken care of before it goes public. Yeah, I'm a candidate. So yeah, I wonder what the other 4 people are. Who are they? Who knows? But I should get off, so I don't know that. I think it would be wise.
Well, I think it's public now.
It's already out there somewhere. So
it's public out there, but there's some other pieces we need to discuss. And I got some coaching that we want to make sure when we get into that, Ray, politely.
I'd be glad to bow out. It's fine. I mean, I understand.
So with that, Ray, I'll say as a member of the community, thank you for your willingness to want to serve, and we've loved working with you so far.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. So
Yeah, either way, I mean, I'm learning all kinds of stuff on this committee that's new to me. You know, with Karen and Michael and Ron, I mean, I got tons of experience around me, and I could, if I stay here, that's going to be fine. I'll learn a whole lot, prepare me for down the road. If I
awesome.
get an opportunity to do something for a year, I can learn some more stuff. So
Awesome.
that's where I'm at. I'm here to serve. I just want to make it a better place. This is my last stop.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ray. It was nice to meet you.
Okay.
Thanks, Ray. Well, if you could maybe check out and
Okay.
so good to see you, Ray. You take good
Okay.
care.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye, Ray.
Bye-bye.
So you guys, I just want to let you know, it's probably, you may have seen on the website, we have 6 candidates. They are Martin Cooper. This is in the
go slow so I can write.
I will slow down, but I'll
Cooper.
also say I'm listing them in the order that we received the application, and Linda shared with me the best practice is they interview in the order that their application was received. So there's no pulling a name out of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the first one is Martin Cooper. Martin has a, I want to get, he has an important appointment, and he will be interviewing via Zoom. And I want to thank Joanne and Morgan for stepping right in there and saying, look, we can make sure that there's a webinar and he could be interviewed via Zoom. And by the way, the executive committee jumped in right away and said, oh yeah, we will do that. The next one is Ray Medar. The third one, Michael, are you tracking? Am I okay so far?
Yep.
Is Colleen Mitchell. And that's Kolleen, Colleen Mitchell. The fourth one is Rickland Asai. And Michael, you can get their spelling off the website.
Where at on the website?
It's in the community. It's in the announcements. It says member applications.
So Rickland, what?
Rickland Asai.
How's that spelled?
Asai. And the fifth one is Barbara Wally. And the final and the sixth one is Susan Miracle.
Her last name is Miracle?
Yes, Miracle. So I was given a template that Linda used, and I want to thank Linda because she's kind of helped coach me a little bit along the way. I said, hey, I need a little help here. You've been through this a few times and with myself. The process is that on Thursday at starting at 6, there'll be the interviews. Martin will, of course, will be number 1 via Zoom. Let me back up. I was given this template, and I'm sending this email out tonight, right after we get off the meeting, to the applicants, giving them this information.
What day?
January 25th, starting at 6. I've asked them to gather in the recreational area downstairs by 5:45. There, I'm going to ask for some help because I can't go upstairs. Is any of you in the committee going to be in the valley that evening, and B, willing to be downstairs to kind of gather the folks together and bring them up? Hi, Michael. I see
I
your hand.
will.
Been there, done
I
that.
can, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So they would gather 5:45, make sure everybody understands what's going to happen. And then they would be escorted up when we're ready for the next person in their order. I shared with them in this email that they would be given 5 minutes to provide an opening statement, their background, their reason for running, whatever rationale, how opening statements go, for them to give that opening statement. And then the board would be using the rest of the time to ask any individual questions that they might have. Once all of their questions have been asked, they could go and sit in the audience and listen to the rest of the interviews. When all the interviews are done, the board would vote and do it by secret ballot. And when the person is chosen, then they would immediately be seated. If that person that is chosen is a member of our committee, or because Ray's on there, he would need to immediately resign. And that would be the first thing that he would do, is sit down and say whatever he's going to say. But in that would be, I'm resigning. So there are 6 people, and there, when I was interviewed at one point, there was and Karen, I think this was the same time you and I were both interviewed. There was a lot of people on there. And so what happened was, all of the people who were interviewed, all of them were eligible for a vote. And then when it got down to the first ballot, what they did was they eliminated the bottom 2. Seems about right. I think they interviewed
Oh yeah.
I think there was more than 6 of us, Karen, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was 8 to 10. And I think, wasn't there a process? This would be a good question for Linda. It seems like there was a process whereby they had to go maybe 2 rounds of just straight voting before anyone was eliminated.
Yeah, that's right.
So people could change their vote. So if they saw like, oh, it's like 3 and 3 and 3, then people could change their votes. But it was 2 or 3 rounds of that, and then they started eliminating, I think, just 1 person or maybe 2 off of the bottom or something, until you got to 2 candidates. And then it was, a majority. I mean, anytime a majority wins, or a person gets the majority votes, they take it. But we had that situation, and maybe even another time, I'm not positive, where it didn't quickly get to a simple majority. And so there's a process where that happens.
Yeah. I will get with Linda. I think you're right. I think it was 2.
And I think it might be in Robert's rules, but I remember they stated, something official was stated, that just because of the sheer number of candidates, that the chances of coming up with even a simple majority on the first vote were slim.
Well, we want to make sure we're fair and aboard. Michael, I see your hand, and Gail, but hang on a second. I will get with Linda and Michael. When you bring the last person up and we get ready to vote, would you be willing to take the little secret ballot slips from the board members, because it'll be hard for me to roll around to grab all those?
Yeah, I can. I can do whatever needs to be done. I'll be there. My thought was the time that I was interviewed, all the interviews were done on Zoom. We didn't go there in person. We did them all on Zoom. So I didn't have to sit there and watch the vote and all that. And my thought was, I think it's fine that each person comes up and they sit there and they can hear what the other interviews are and the questions that were asked each interviewee. I personally think they should all go downstairs while this process is being done and then be brought back up for the final call. I wouldn't want to sit there through this process and hear how it was, the voting was done. I mean, to me, it would be, I have enough trouble with self-esteem as it is, so I would get my feelings hurt and leave. So I would suggest that it's okay that they can all sit there and listen and see the whole process, but when it comes to the vote, they could all go back downstairs and sit until it's over, and then bring them all back up. That's my suggestion. I mean,
yeah, that's a good suggestion. Gail, what was your thought?
Well, so yeah, this is good. Michael would gather the ballot slips and then hand them to you, Rob, and you read them round by round by round.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then when the board is questioning the candidates, is it all ad lib, or is each candidate asked the same questions, and is this an important issue or not?
Yeah, well, good point. I suggested on the evening when it was announced that there had been a resignation, that what I said was, I'm used to structured interviews where each candidate is asked the same questions, and of course we were hiring for people, and we had a scoring system. But I still think that in something like this, it would be good if you ask the exact same questions, then you are making your decision based on people's responses. In the past, I've seen it where it was well, I don't think I've ever seen it done that way. It's always been ad-libbed. And in some cases, it got a little more structured. There was each board member asked the same question. So that got a little better. In my case, there was somebody who wasn't really a question. I'll just leave it like that. So I made long story short, Gail, I made the suggestion that maybe the N&E committee could assist and provide some questions, and no one really took me up on it. So go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I feel like I had the same experience, maybe not as bad as yours, but there were some questions that were not productive. Not productive. That's what I'll say. So I don't know what ability to influence that N&E has, but I would certainly put it out there that this is not a time to belittle or say anything questionable to any of the candidates. At the very least, I would say they all have one question, right? Like we're not going to turn it into a debate or whatever, which I feel like I maybe have seen too. They each get the opportunity to ask. Also for time's sake, they all have one question that they can ask, and the person answers it, and the end. It's not a debate.
Right. And even though I don't get a vote, I'd probably still ask a question, because I'm not very shy. What can I say? Michael.
I know I understand what Karen was saying, and I'm hoping that we have a board that's going to end the two-sided process here, and make it all one thing, us instead of us and them. And the other thing though is in the questioning, each person's going to have a little bit different life experience that they're going to present, and so the questions kind of can't be cookie cuttered because we're not all cookie cuttered. And so there's going to be some need for flexibility, but it's got to be for the good of the community, the questions that they're asking, and for expertise or whatever, however it's done. But anyhow, that was that's it.
Thanks, Michael. Gail.
I just wonder, Rob, if you now have timed this out. You've got 6 people. We've got 8 board members, assuming they all come. They each get 1 question. So let's assume that it takes them half a minute to ask their question. And then the person responding needs 2 minutes. I mean, didn't do the calculation yet, but can you squeeze all this into an hour? Or it's important to sort of have an idea of how this thing is going to happen, and are you going to limit the answers, maybe even limit the timing of the questions so that you can get through it without, without running until 10 o'clock at night.
Well, is all this going to be done prior to a board meeting?
Yes.
This should be a totally separate thing that they do, and then they should just not have a big agenda for this night.
Yeah, I haven't seen the agenda packet, but what I will say is typically it's done prior to a board meeting, and the person that is chosen is immediately seated and allowed to join. Not allowed, they are part of the board, and they join in and have a full voting power. Yes, an hour was set aside, but I don't know if when that was done, whether anybody realized there'd be 6 people. This could easily turn into an hour and a half.
Yeah,
I think longer than that. If every board member asks a question and each question takes 3 minutes, the asking and the answering, that's 24 minutes of questioning plus 5 minutes of introduction. So that's 30 minutes per candidate. Now you could pare that down and have it 2 minutes, and then you have 20 minutes per candidate, but 20.
And
you've burned your hour before you've burned your hour before you even started a voting process.
Right.
Which I think is fine, but everybody just needs to have that expectation, right? Like this is probably going to go an hour and a half to 2 hours, including the voting and all of that. Just of the deciding on the candidate, which is fine. This is an important thing.
Yeah.
But everyone needs to kind of understand, and maybe we can put, you can put some time limits around it, or we can discuss it to have it be a little bit more streamlined, but and there's just going to be transition time in between going and getting the next candidate and bringing them up. That's going to take time. So I'm saying it's going to be at least 2 hours.
Well, this is one of those things where we facilitate by ensuring that there are applicants. But it's probably the board president that owns the interviewing process, and we own the vote part of it. But
you should approach Keith with this timeline that we're talking about tomorrow, and say, Keith, we sat and talked about this, and with 6 candidates, 1 hour is really not going to do a decent job of getting the proper candidate in. And can you keep the other agenda stuff down to a minimum just for tonight? Make a suggestion.
Yeah. No, I work well with them. The other thing I was going to say is it's going to take a while for people to come upstairs with you too, Michael. I mean, by the time someone sits down and you come up,
Yeah, it's not like they're on deck, right? Like right there. They can't be right outside the door. They're downstairs. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, so I'm thinking I'm gonna be texting you saying, "Hey, Mike, it's time to bring the next one up."
Okay.
So no, this is all really good. Gail, I see your hands up
Yeah,
again.
just to follow up, and it was, I think, partially answered. I wondered if you, Rob, as NNE chair, were going to be the de facto chair of this process, but you think, or there's some talk that maybe it would be Keith.
My experience has been when I was interviewed was the NNE chair brought me up as a potential. Let me rephrase it. The NNE chair escorted each person up from downstairs, introduced them, and then they had their opening statement, and then the chair, the board chair, our president asked a question, and it was just round robin, and when they were done, they were done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different. This is a little different than, it's sort of a hybrid responsibility than the AGM.
Well, you're going to have fun.
I always have fun.
I'm sorry I won't be there Thursday. I'll probably be in the Valley tomorrow. I know it's not on our agenda, but hey, can I get into the Valley tomorrow?
Oh yeah,
it's all
sure.
cleared out.
Yeah.
It's all cleared out now. Okay, so I'm going to, Michael, I'm sure you've taken good minutes, but I'm going to coordinate with Keith in regard to try not to have too full of an agenda, that this is going to be well more than an hour. Yeah, my brain's kind of swimming a little bit. So I'm thank gosh we've got a great secretary that takes good minutes.
Yeah, a quickie, Rob. You know how you and Karen served as timekeepers? In other words, if the candidates are going to be given 2 minutes to speak, you may need a timekeeper.
I have a stopwatch.
Yeah.
There's an app on your phone for a stopwatch too.
Yeah. By the way, they're given 5 minutes for their opening statement.
That's going to be a lot. That's a long opening statement.
Nobody will use 5 minutes unless they're me. I mean, most people didn't even use the 2 minutes, I mean.
That's true.
So
maybe
I can burn 5 minutes quick.
You and me both, brother.
Yeah. What time do you want me there? The board,
Michael, could
6:30?
About 5:30. I'll meet you down there.
Okay.
I'll bring you some coffee or something, brother.
I just want to know what time you want me there. All right.
All right. So I think we've covered everything on the agenda. Anything else?
6 pages.
I've
got 6 pages. I move we adjourn.
I'm with you.
Anybody else for the good of the order? All right, we are adjourning at 7:55.
All right, great meeting. Thank you, Rob. Good job.
Great meeting. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye, Gail. See you later. Drive safely up here.
Well, I mean,
the roads
just in general, you do, but the roads are good. Seriously.
Yeah. I'm gonna drive to Sumner tomorrow, so the roads are wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, for sure the freeway's good, but even the roads and even Gate 5 is great.
It's all cleared. Well, that's good. That's why I was going to come at you sooner, and I thought, don't do it. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Rob.
Bye, everybody.
All right, bye.
Is the recording over?
No. I'm stopping right now.
Oh, great.
Okay, bye, you guys.
Bye. Did she end it? Still recording?
Yes. No, I am ending.
Okay. Bye, Morgan.
Bye.